March 1778. The two gentlemen stood back to back, pistols in their hands pointed up, waiting for the command to move to their marks, defined by two stakes pushed into the ground 5 yards away from each participant. 10 yards directly to their flank stood the dueller's seconds, a surgeon, a vicar, and the master of the field. The insult to the honor of the dukedom was tenuous at best. It was unfortunate for Mr. Lambert that his opponent, Baron Davies, was the Duke's proxy. It was unfortunate for Baron Davies that Mr. Hugh Lambert was a most inflexible gentleman. Baron Ambrose Davies was of medium height, lean of build, and sported dark hair and brown eyes. One could not forget him, for it was his constant habit to remind his company of his rank, his connections, and his passion. His passion was dueling. He proudly sported a vertical 2-inch scar incurred from a duel 2 years previously, that one contested with rapiers. His opponent eventually yielded, but not before the Baron left him having to use a cane to walk so that he could compensate his weight against his severed thigh muscle in his left leg. Mr. Hugh Lambert was of medium height, medium build, and neutral colored of hair and eye. One could not meet a more forgettable person. No one knew of his wife's connections to the peerage and the upper reaches of the Anglican Church. Mr. Hugh Lambert was an unknown to the Baron, much less to his sponsor, the Duke of Grafton. An afterthought for the house party host, the Lambert couple received a last-minute invitation because of a late receipt of regrets from a desirous couple that would have balanced out the dining table. Thus, proximity rather than priority generated the invitation to the exclusive gathering. During the separation of the sexes, the gentlemen, especially the Duke, dived deep into the after-dinner drinks, Mr. Lambert abstaining. When offered a cigar, the Duke ignored Mr. Lambert's second polite refusal. Despite insistence that a guest show good manners by joining his host, Mr. Lambert, a teetotaler, utterly refused to be manipulated by the Baron and let the party know he preferred not to compromise his personal moral code to placate an acquaintance's vanity. The Duke roared his outrage in a drunken fashion, calling into question Hugh Lambert's honor, who refused to rise to the baiting of the Duke, who was on the far side of 5 and 60 years of age. The Duke quickly asked the Baron to be his proxy, which the Baron humbly accepted, covertly gleeful for the opportunity. Mr. Lambert, even if he had a hint of flexibility in his character, which he did not, could not refuse the challenge from the Baron. The duelers scheduled to meet the following week, accompanied by their seconds, to agree upon the terms. Mr. Lambert bowed to his host, begged leave to retire, collected his wife, and arranged for his carriage to take them home. Once home, Lambert sent an express to a connection he had made when sitting for his university exams. Although a bit older than that gentleman, they enjoyed each other's camaraderie and subsequently exchanged informative letters regularly. Hughes Express simply asked his friend to assist him in a matter of honor. His friend, along with a surgeon, arrived on horseback, accompanying the express rider days later. Negotiations with the Duke's proxy and his second deteriorated to the point of no return the next day, the Baron itching to duel regardless of the consequences. The local magistrate, a veteran of past war campaigns and not beholden to the Duke, agreed to serve as master of the field, waiving the right to hold any of the dueling party accountable for crimes against the crown. The magistrate chose an unoccupied farm with a secluded meadow surrounded by trees, seeking privacy for the illegal activity. All that remained was for the challenged party to choose his weapon. The Baron, in his arrogance, never considered himself to be in danger. Mr. Hugh Lambert was unmatched at trap shooting, a sport neither the Duke nor the Baron could describe, much less take part in. Lambert's gamekeeper had never recorded a scoring of his employer of more than a single miss for every 25 snipe or woodcock game bird released. His rigid set of morals, combined with his inflexibility in relinquishing a slight against his person or his family name, made him an excellent shot. Though he had rarely fired a pistol, he had a natural ability with firearms. He remained emotionless as he prepared to defend himself for nothing more than a poorly made declaration in the wrong company. Baron Ambrose Davies enjoyed dueling. Although his prowess with bladed weapons was far superior to ballistic ones, he felt that due to his reputation alone, his opponent would yield, offer a forfeit, and publicly apologize. His last 5 duels had ended as such. This one would not. He did not know his opponent was a provincial sheep farmer who spent no time in town nor read the social broadsheets. The Duke, too drunk to recall the faux slight, had no remembrance of his party guest, and moved on to organizing his next hunt, putting the Baron's duel out of his mind. Unfortunately for Baron Davies, no one with an iota of information of the day's outcome would ever forget the Lambert family. The master of the field inquired of the dueller's readiness. "Ready," answered the Baron, exuding confidence. "Ready," responded Lambert, his voice flat. The master of the field inquired of the dueller's seconds if all was in order. "All is in order," responded the Baron's second. "All is in order," responded Lambert's. The master of the field inquired of the dueller's seconds if either side wished to forfeit. "Nay," answered the Baron's second. "Nay," responded Lambert's. The master of the field inquired of the duellers if either principal wished to delope. "Nay," answered the Baron. "Nay," responded Lambert. The Baron frowned and began to worry. The master of the field instructed the duellers to take their mark. Mr. Lambert briskly walked the 5 yards to his mark, turned, and faced his opponent with his pistol pointed at the ground in his right hand, his arm hanging loosely. He felt no fear. The Baron hesitated for a moment, then realized he was under scrutiny. More interested in his reputation than his life, he walked to his mark, turned, and faced his opponent, the distance between them a very close 10 yards. Fear gripped him. "Cock your weapons," instructed the master of the field. 2 distinct but separate clicks broke the silence but did not echo. "On my mark, aim at your opponent, but do not fire. Seconds, prepare to defend your principal." 4 pistols raised up to eye level of each armed man. The Baron and his second sighted on Lambert. Lambert and his second, who was standing within arm's reach to his counterpart, sighted on the Baron. "On my mark, principals may fire. Seconds may only fire if the principal fails to wait for my mark. Acknowledge your understanding." "Yes," confirmed the Baron, as did his second. The Baron felt his breathing increase. "Yes," confirmed Lambert, as did his second. Neither hesitated. Seconds ticked. "Fire!" called the master of the field. The Baron flinched, hesitating but a split second. Mr. Lambert did not, immediately squeezing the trigger of his pistol fluidly, expertly. His shot flew true, hitting the Baron in the center of his chest, the bullet penetrating his breastplate, exploding his heart. The Baron, thrown backward from the impact of the bullet, reflexively pulled the trigger of his pistol, the weapon pointed slightly above and to the right of his target, missing. The Baron's second, having lowered his arm, raised his pistol when he saw the Baron get shot and sighted on his principal's opponent. Lambert's second, seeing the man's intent, quickly put his pistol to the head of his counterpart. The Baron's second fired at Lambert, hitting him in the stomach. As Lambert fell, his second pulled the trigger a half-second too late, blasting the man's brains all over the surgeon and the vicar, then dropped his weapon to the ground. No one moved. No one spoke. When the smoke blew through the trees surrounding Chalk Farm and the remaining witnesses recovered their senses, the master of the field surveyed the carnage, trying to assess the degree of the disaster on hand. From the first shot to the last, less than 5 seconds had passed. Gazing around frustrated, he looked at the sky and exclaimed to no one, "Bloody hell, this, bollocks!" Gathering his dignity, he regrouped. "Doctor, please see to the wounded," he ordered. Staring at Lambert's second, not knowing his name, he nodded and offered, "You did well to act in defense of your friend." "Not well enough." "No, I dare say. Who knew the Baron had such dishonorable associates? Not I." "Nor I." The doctor returned. "None lived," he reported sadly. The master of the field pursed his lips. "Let us ferry the bodies away. Maybe we can salvage something of the day. The Baron's carriage is at the east end of the field." As a group, they carried the Baron's corpse and that of his second to the Baron's carriage and laid them inside, closing the door, the driver nowhere in sight. Lambert's second, the vicar, and the good doctor remained silent, allowing the magistrate to lead. The master of the field shrugged, looked across Chalk Farm Field, and gestured to the remaining carriage. "Let us continue with the unfortunate Mr. Lambert." As a group, the doctor and Lambert's second carried the man to his carriage, the magistrate and the vicar following them. Upon their approach, they all saw the bullet hole in the carriage's door. Lambert's second shook his head at the errant shot, pursed his lips in disapproval. The 2 men lowered the Lambert corpse to the ground. Lambert's second stepped up and yanked open the carriage door, and then jumped back in horror as Mrs. Lambert's body rolled onto the ground, her neck displaying a gaping hole, a trickle of blood still seeping into her neckline. The doctor recovered himself and acted quickly, applying a pressure bandage, but could not save her. His addresses were to no avail. She, too, was dead. The magistrate and the vicar stared at Mrs. Lambert's body in shock. The ordeal was not over. Hugh Lambert's second saw movement on the floor of the carriage. Stepping carefully up, he reached under the carriage seat and tenderly assisted a small child from within. Lieutenant Thomas Bennet stared into the unseeing violet eyes of the Lambert's 6-year-old daughter, she completely traumatized, wearing a look of terror, a look he would never forget. The four men stared at each other in complete dismay. How were they to explain a scandal of this proportion? An illegal duel, 3 men dead, a family upon the field in a carriage, a wife killed, and a child orphaned. Disregarding the broadsheets, the societal shunning, and the fodder for the gossips, what would the Crown's reaction be? The 4 men stared at each other, utterly speechless. What could be done?